Good afternoon. I wanted to welcome you to this next edition of the Maternal and Child Health Research Institute seminar series. We have a wonderful seminar for you today by Sijo Thomas, the Clinical Research Informatics Project Manager, who's going to be talking about the importance and the really critical aspects of clinical research informatics. But thank you very much for joining us again for the virtual seminar series. Next slide. In 2 weeks, we'll have really a fascinating and wonderful illustration of the Stanford Biodesign Fellows, who will basically talk about the 4 to 5 projects that have won the Biodesign Fellows competition. These faculty fellows basically competed for the best biodesign from the Byers Institute, Byers Center for Biodesign, and will present their projects to us on August 17th. Next slide. After that, we'll look forward to, in September, October, and then December, again, a wonderful lineup of innovative and new maternal and child health topics. And then next slide. Really want to emphasize and promote the virtual Stanford Maternal and Child Health Research Institute Symposium on Friday, November 6th. We'll have a very innovative poster design, interactive poster session, where for the week before, submitted and accepted abstracts will be viewed, and then we'll have an interactive poster session as well as a lineup of speakers on that Friday, November 6th. Will be highlighted by our keynote speaker, David Williams, who's the Senior VP and Chief Scientific Officer of Boston Children's, as well as a COVID research session headed by our own Stanford Bonnie Maldonado. Please start submitting abstracts today. The deadline for it is September 21st, but start submitting abstracts now. Look for the submission on our website. Next slide. This is our education committee, which we're welcome to join if you'd love to. So please contact us if you have any questions or any suggestions for any new topics. Next slide. And please, we'll be sending you a survey, online survey about today's talk. We'd love your feedback, any suggestions or improvements that you would like to make. But today, next slide, we really want to focus on Stanford Clinical Research Informatics at the Children's Health. With the evident and the onset of big data, both in terms of there's no more important topic than clinical research informatics. And that will be discussed today by Sijo Thomas, who's basically the informatics project manager here at Stanford Children's Health. Really the explosion of both medical data, big informatic data, omics data that we heard about from, for example, Mike Schneider's group. We need to organize that into a way that can be used to apply to our children and expectant mothers. Sijo Thomas really is been at the forefront. He started in 2010 at Mount Sinai, basically rolling out their EPIC program, came to Stanford Children's Health in 2012, where he basically rolled out Stanford EPIC, EPIC Beaker for SHC integration, EPIC infection modules, and for the last 4 years has really done heavy lifting for the clinical research informatics project, reporting to the Chief Medical Informatics Officer at Stanford Children's Health. He's really been instrumental as part of the clinical research structural organization and IS support to provide this EPIC and then data integration and aggregation for applying to our children. And so we'll look forward to his talk today. Sijo, thanks for joining us and look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Oho. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. And I'm going to share my screen. So hope everybody can see it. Oksana, let me know if any issues. So yes, as Dr. Oho introduced, this is about Stanford Children's Health Clinical Research Informatics. So let's go to the table of contents for today's talk. So I'm going to make an introduction to clinical research informatics, what it is in a literature perspective, how it is structured at Stanford Children's Health, and the electronic medical record and clinical research, that perspective. And clinical systems and clinical research is always challenging, so something about that, and the data abstraction from these systems, and how we hope to develop the governance around this. So that is the table of contents for today's talk. So I understand we have folks from Stanford and Stanford community, and even from outside. This is mostly Stanford people will find it more easier sometimes, some of the terms, but I will try to explain my level best. And I understand many of the institutions have already a robust clinical research informatics, structure. But we have, our leadership have clearly identified the significance of that, and we are really moving in the right direction. So this is about Stanford Children's Health Vision 2025. You can see that breakthrough discoveries is one of our missions, and it is very important for us. And the way, one of the strategies we are hoping to achieve that mission is advancing academic and clinical excellence, and supporting clinical research and translational science. So it is very important for the organization to achieve this mission by effectively implementing this strategy. And here in this part, you can see that various phases of the translational research, from T0 to T4, all of us are familiar, especially in this COVID times. All these phases are very much familiar for everybody, but T0 is mostly at bench, but T1 to T4 is mostly happens in a hospital setting, and T4 towards the community. So, the notion that clinical research happens at the school side is not really right, because when you see from T1 onwards, it happens at a hospital or in a clinical setting. So it is very important we have to have the kind of infrastructure to support clinical research in a hospital setting. So that is all about clinical research informatics, is the support for the clinical research in an IT perspective. So let's go to the next slide. So this is the governance, how clinical research informatics is supported. So all of you know MCHRI, Maternal Child Health Research Institute. This is the governance around MCHRI, led by Director Mary Leonard and the co-directors David Stevenson and Tony Oro. So last 10 years after the formation of MCHRI, it was mainly concentrating on teaching and strategic programs. But last couple of years, because of the changing landscape, MCHRI have decided to create a clinical research support office to support clinical research operations in the hospital setting. So CRSO was formed. Carl Sylvester is the CRSO director. Alison Falwell is appointed as a hospital employee to support clinical research operations. My role was created 4 years back in IS department to support research in an IS perspective, and I report to Nathalie Pagler. She's our CMIO, and our CIO is Ed Kopetsky. So even though I'm part of an IS employee, IS department, I closely work with the CRSO and a part of CRSO. So it is itself is a good example how Stanford Children's Health entities are collaborating to move our mission forward. So next slide is governance. I already mentioned that it is an initiative by MCHRI along with the hospital leadership. This executive advisory committee is guiding CRSO Clinical Research Support Office, and you can see it comprises most of our VPs and leaders from both hospital side and the School of Medicine side. This is the core team. Carl, Mary Chen, she is the executive director of MCHRI. Alison, myself, and May Zepeda, she is a manager, research manager. So we have formed different groups The key is that hospitals work in a very vertical way, but clinical research happens in a horizontal or in a lateral way, comprising many departments. So we have formed different work groups to work through all these challenges, bringing the stakeholders together. And you can see that we have marked research IS governance committee, or this work group that we are given permission by the leadership to form this. So I will go through the details of this committee in the future slides, like towards the end. So what is clinical research informatics? It is, most of the people probably are not familiar with the term. Everybody knows what is clinical informatics, what is bioinformatics. But if you look at the literature, clinical informatics is the bridge between bioinformatics and clinical informatics. The bench to bedside science needs support from clinical research informatics. So my role is to support clinical trials and any other translational research that is happening at the bedside. So in this snippet, you can see that this is from Columbia University website. It clearly summarizes what is clinical research is. Basically, it is sharing big health data, learning health system, and improving research workflows and interdisciplinary team science. So the breadth is very much, because you have to clearly bridge this gap between bioinformatics and clinical informatics. So who all are the stakeholders? So many stakeholders are involved. If you divide clinical informatics into 3 domains in this literature, you can see academics, practice of CRI, and leadership. I'm going to concentrate mostly on practice of CRI today, but you can see that the stakeholders involved, I can clearly connect myself to this slide because of the activities that is happening for the last many months. You have to deal with the individual researchers at multiple levels. There are a lot of organizational players, starting from hospital privacy, hospital regulatory, IRB, Institutional Review Board, RMG, Research Management Group at school side, even Office of General Counsel at Stanford. All these departments and entities are very much important in advancing our plans in clinical research informatics. At the same time, we are also working with the national, international bodies, or we have to be mindful of those regulations. For example, FDA, any clinical trial information ultimately will be going to FDA. We have to work with outside sponsors, Genentech or Pfizer or whoever is the funding sponsor for the trial. We have to be mindful of their needs. NIH studies. NIH is the biggest sponsor for biomedical research, and a lot of individual researchers are submitting grants. We have to support those initiatives, help them to design the studies. We have to be mindful of California Medical Information Act, HIPAA laws. So there are so many stakeholders involved in this. And that is the significance of CRSO, Clinical Research Support Office also, because one person or one department, it's going to be difficult to deal with all the stakeholders. So Clinical Research Support is formed effectively to strategize and streamline the processes involving all these stakeholders. So as I said, I will be concentrating on practice of clinical research informatics today. So let's go one by one and let's chat about research planning and conduct. So this slide, you don't have to bother reading the minute details here, but this diagram basically, when you hear about clinical research, you mostly think about the science behind the research. Is the medication going to be effective or the vaccine going to be effective? But there are so many other aspects in an operational level you have to worry about when you run the study in a hospital setting. The first thing is the research finance, because anything happens in EMR is going to trigger a bill to the patient or to the insurance. So you don't want to trigger research bills to the insurance. So it is very important you work with the financial services and you have solutions in EMR to separate those bills. And research informatics related with EMR is very important because you have to work along with the workflows that is developed in a clinical setting. So, medication administration by nurses, dispensing by pharmacy, lab draws by phlebotomist. So you have to make your study plan around these workflows. And it is very important you work with the EMR, experts or the team to make your research in accordance with the existing workflows. You don't want to break any workflows or you don't want to develop new ones. Research operations in general, like how you are going to recruit. Is it going to be in a hospital setting you are going to recruit or social media? So all those research operations have an impact, especially if you're recruiting in a hospital setting. A lot of stakeholders are in play. So there are so many facets for this trial execution. So this slide shows research and EMR and how the data should be. So there is a notion that all the research data should be in clinical trial management system. We use Encore, and EMR should be holding the patient data. So that is going to be challenging. We cannot easily segregate the data between EMR and Epic because you need the basic study information, orders, results associated with the studies. All this has to be in EMR. So you cannot keep this information only in CTMS. But then you have to do the necessary documentation in EMR, especially if you are getting the consent and the patient, hospital location. If you are having results in the EMR, you have to have it stored in EMR so that other clinical, treatment team members can see those results. So it is very important you have to have a plan how you are going to create this overlap in a privacy and regulatory conscious way. It is very important to separate and segregate the data in EMR, whatever you're doing, especially the charges and documentation. You should be able to clearly separate and segregate the data. So you cannot, it is an overlapping situation, but there should be clear policies and guidelines, what is going to be where and how it is going to be captured in each system. So this is a representation of flow of data from Encore to Epic. These are our systems. You can see that study information and billing grid for the study comes from Encore to Epic. We are working on an interface. Now it is a manual process. Everything is copied, this information to Epic, but in the future it will be through an interface. This RSH, I just want to denote that research in Epic, we call it as RSH. So it kind of indicates the research term in Epic. So what I'm saying here is that, there are so many activities happening in the EMR. You can see appointments. These are a representation of activities, but each activity you should be able to call out research related ones so that you can easily segregate the data in EMR. So especially the charges, there is going to be a charge review to be done by research coordinator before sending the study information, like charges to study PT account. PT account means study account, the account that is created for studies. The insurance. You don't want to send the research bills to the insurance. So this charge review is going to be much easier if you design your workflows to clearly tag research activities. So then these charges also will be generated with the tags, and it will be much easier for the research coordinator to review it. If not, research coordinator will have to review through thousands of pages or hundreds of pages of charges to pick the right ones, and there is a high potential for error. So this life cycle is very important. The study originates in OnCore, but the information comes to Epic, and there should be appropriate tagging and appropriate solutions in each workflow associated with Epic. And you can see that the School of Medicine, that transition happening from School of Medicine to SCH, Stanford Children's Health, and CRSO is supporting this transition. So let's look into the next aspect when you start the study recruitment. So recruitment, we are supporting researchers to do the recruitment. Patients can be contacted using my portal. We call it as Epic portal, we call it as MyChart on the children's side. There are different terms at different places. So we are able to send study notification to patients in patient portal. It will almost look like this. This is an example of a study that we recently sent out. This letter is to be approved by IRB. There are so many stakeholders involved in getting this approved, but patients can be identified, the right patients appropriate for the study, and contacted, and patients can say whether they are interested or not. And one thing to remember is that patient information is not given to the study team unless patients say, I am interested. So there is an honest broker in between. I'm going to come to that next slide. So we recently started doing this, and we encourage researchers to come to us if they need help with this. So this is an example how patients will get the notification in their email when there is a message in their MyChart. They will get a notification, hey, you have a message, and you can look at it. And one advantage is that patients can tailor their profile in my portal. So patients can say which all are their studies or which all are the areas of studies they are interested to get these messages. So this is an overview of the research participation program that Stanford is having, collaborates with Children's Health. So Catherine Connors is the manager, and she's leading this effort as an honors broker. We have faculty advisors. So basically study teams can approach Catherine, and she is going to help them, what is the best strategy? Is it direct emails, or is it going to be using my portal, or is it going to be social media campaign? This team have the expertise to decide on that. And if it is through Epic, they are going to reach out to me, and we are going to collaborate, to the next steps. So remember this email address, for Stanford folks who are interested to reach out to this team. So here are some statistics. You can see that a couple of studies, there was an interest rate of 2.1 and 7.6. Only one patient or family has unsubscribed the email notifications. I don't have the My portal, MyChart data now because we started the process, but we stopped it because of the COVID situation. So we are expecting to restart it in the near future. So I don't have the data for that. But this approach to email is probably much better than this approach, what you see here. This is the old approach, right? Putting, notes and, paper information everywhere in the hospital and praying that somebody is going to pick it up. The response rate is going to be much less compared to this. This research participation program can help the study teams to enroll patients very easily. So let's go to the next topic, workflow and planning. So again, I kind of mentioned to you that you have to work in the existing workflows by which the clinical workflows are happening. So it is very important. I mentioned that orders and every activity that is happening in the EMR has to be tagged. That is the ideal workflow. So in Epic, we have an option. I'm not able to use screenshots from Epic because of our, like controls and or agreement with vendor, we are not supposed to. So research orders, there is an option to tag the research order as the study order. And there are a lot of advantages. You can drive the bill to research PT account. Again, research account, just consider the PT as research account. And also if you tag the studies, it will act as an identifier for the clinical teams. Clinical teams can see and understand that, hey, this is a research order, somebody else will be acting upon it. You know, that communication is very important. Otherwise, nurses don't have any mechanism to know who's going to carry out this order. Likewise, if you are creating an appointment out of the order, for example, echocardiogram order, you can create an appointment out of that order. So any appointment out of that order is going to be automatically a research appointment. So any bills out of that is going to be going to the research account. So there are so many advantages by tagging the research orders to the study. And at present, it is not mandatory. We are in an educational drive. We hope to do this in a soft way, but I think probably, you know, in the near future, we will be enforcing this more strictly. And also one advantage is you can remove this in legal medical request. For ROA is release of information. So if there is a request for a legal medical record, you can easily filter out these orders because you don't have to release it because it is part of the study. Research notes, our regulatory department wants to again, you know, separate this data. So we have created a research note type. It is accessible only to the study teams, but it can be viewed by everybody. And again, you know, you can easily filter that out in the medical record request. So this is something we encourage research teams to do. You know, instead of putting a progress note, you are supposed to do the research notes. Adverse event documentation, it is very significant, especially in oncology studies and all. You do not want to document study-related adverse events in a flow sheet, confusing, you know, is that related to regular care or is it related to study? So EPIC or our EMR is giving an option to associate the adverse event documentation to the study information. And it can be documented only by the study teams, but it is viewable to all. There are so many options, like, you know, you can set severity, you can do the study attribution, all this can be done. And also you are able to import National Cancer Institute terminology so that you don't have to come up with a list. You can, you know, there are different sets like you know, set 4, set 5, like that, depending upon which one your study is going to use. We are able to help you by making that data available to you. So that is about adverse event documentation. This is admission, discharge, transfer notifications. So our stem cell teams are heavily using this because they want to know when the patient comes to ER, they would like to know, is it because of the study side effect patient is coming? Some of the studies are even supposed to inform the sponsor about that visits. So they don't want to dig through the charts every day, which all of the patients came over the weekend. So we generate a notification to them. There are so many ways, either in basket, it can be an email or text. Text and email will not contain PHI. We will say that, hey, this study patient is having a visit, so that you can open Epic and see in basket, which is that patient. And we are also able to generate notifications for appointment cancellation, post-mortem notifications. Appointment cancellation notification can save you time, because if you're expecting a patient to show up next week and a patient canceled appointment today, you can easily contact the patient and reschedule it, instead of not knowing that cancellation and going to the clinic and waiting for the patient to come next week. So there is a lot of workflow efficiency you can bring if you use these functionalities. Research billing review, I mentioned it is very important, the billing review part. Let me see the messages. Okay. I mentioned the billing review part. Research coordinators have to review each bill to ensure that we are not wrongly sending the bills to insurance. So this payment review is very important. We used to do it in paper. Even now, many of the departments are using it in paper, but we are transitioning departments to start using this Epic feature, Epic billing review in Epic. Many departments made that transition and they are finding it very easier. The reason is that it has to be very accurate, this review, because if you make mistakes, you are going to send it to insurance and insurance is going to deny it and the patients will get the bill. So you don't want to be in a situation that you told the patient that it is free and it is voluntary, their participation in the research, and ultimately patient is getting the bill. That is legally not right, but above than that, it is morally not right. So it is very important to have a streamlined process to support it. So EpicCare link, this is a feature we recently enabled. So many of these clinical trials are supported by pharmaceutical sponsors. So their representatives should be able to review the information in EPIC or our EMR because they want to ensure that all the audit trails are maintained right, all the information is stored appropriately. So as part of our study agreement, we are supposed to give them access to review that information. But at the same time, they are not Stanford employees. So there is a risk outside folks accessing our system and how many charts they should be able to see, because we don't want to show all the charts in the system to the patient, like these monitors. So we are using this feature by Epic called EpicCare Link. And it is kind of a web portal. So the monitors are given access to this portal. They are not logging into our network. And we can release the charts only requested by them. So if they request 5 charts, we are able to release it only for the time period that is allowed. And after that chart is going to disappear. So there is restriction on who can access and how long they can access. And this feature that they can log into the web portal easily without accessing our network. So we implemented this feature a couple of months back in coordination with the many stakeholders. You can see that privacy, HIMSS operations, IS security, HIMSS information systems team, MCHRI teams. So it was a multi-departmental project and it is going really good. These are some historic volumes, how monitors used to request access to the charts. So we are expecting to have the same kind of volume, but in a much safer and much coordinated way. So I kind of touched upon many of the features that researchers can consider to integrate the clinical research workflows into the research clinical processes. There are so many other features that our EMR, Epic can support. You can see order sets, like a research task feature, appointment notifications, recruitment BPA. We started using recruitment BPA for one of the COVID studies recently. The BPA triggers for the physician, medical assistant, to ask the patient whether the patient is interested to fill up a survey. And they can scan the barcode from the screen itself and fill up the survey. So that is going very good. So CRSO is planning to support, enabling all these features using clinical research informatics, organization. So our goal is to support our research teams in using many of these features. So let's talk about data access integration, that piece. It's an interesting area. So clinical research informatics, we saw that it is about learning health system too. Everybody is very much familiar with this diagram. It is very famous, this circular learning health system. But there are so many nitty-gritty details you have to work out. So you can see that everything starts at Epic and the data in Epic. This is a representation of electrophysiologic data that we are having, echocardiogram data or imaging data, various national registries. On this side, you can see a lot of computing capabilities. Nero is our computing platform at School of Medicine side, university side. REDCap, uh, all of you are familiar. REDCap is for research data tracking. We have a cloud, unlimited cloud storage option with the Google Cloud. We use BigQuery. We have cohort tools at the school side. So you can see that this transition, it has to happen in a very seamless way for you to have a very good learning health system. And there are so many details. Even if you throw in 1 million, it is, or millions, it is not going to solve it immediately, because you, along with the technical issues, you have to work on the privacy regulatory aspects. And at Stanford, it is more challenging because our hospital and our school are two legal entities. So we have to, even though we work in a very collaborative manner, we have to solve a lot of privacy legal issues to ensure this seamless transition. So again, MCHRI is hoping to bridge that gap, or going to bridge that situation using CRSO. So that is why Clinical Research Support Office is very much important on our side. So these are some of the types of clinical informatics projects we are getting. You don't have to go through all these nitty-gritty details. Only look at the headers. These are the 4 types of buckets of projects we are getting: organizational, School of Medicine initiated, department initiated, and individual researchers. The key is that here, these organizational and the School of Medicine initiated projects can be anticipated much earlier, and you can plan accordingly. I think this is going to be the same, this nature of or bucketing of projects is going to be same, not only in Stanford, but all other academic institutions. But these 2 projects, department initiated and individual researchers, the challenge is that you cannot always anticipate and plan in your strategic planning for that. You cannot allocate resources much before, because the schedule of this is driven by external grant support, innovative ideas your faculty is suddenly thinking about. So, hospital or IS departments are historically are designed to plan ahead through a annual strategic planning, but that is not going to work with these 2 project buckets. You have to be very agile to support this. So you have to, clinical research informatics, it is going to be very difficult to have a, waterfall type of project management. It is very important to have an agile approach to many of these projects, and resource allocation and execution. So this is about the big data that Dr. Oro mentioned at the beginning. So much interest in big data, and at Stanford, we are lucky to have a very innovative computer science program and a lot of talent. But we can leverage, from the hospital perspective, we can leverage that talent if the data is available for the researchers immediately. So we are in the process of moving a lot of this data to school side. For example, Philips monitor data, we started moving a couple of years back. We have recurrent, regular batches to move it. We convert it into CSV file, and school then reconvert it back to the waveform whenever the researcher is requesting it. EEG data, it is like first batch was transferred last year, but we are hoping to set up a regular transfer mechanism for that. IECG, it's a small database. We are working on setting that up also. Imaging is a petabyte scale. You can imagine there is already radiology data is getting transferred to school side. But now the talk is, or the request is to transfer the echocardiogram data for the PED side. So there is a researcher requesting it, and we want to facilitate it. There is so many other data that you can use up. You know, researchers are interested, for example, retinal scans and many other data points. So one of our efforts is to ensure that these data is available at the school side. We do not want to vend the data directly to the researchers to the privacy concerns. We want to transfer it to school, and school already have a mechanism built out, you know, to check the request and ensure the security of the data storage for the researcher. So school have existing mechanisms, and we want to use it up, you know, and use Stanford Children's Resources for many other purposes. There are so many challenges. It is not really like, you know, just a technical solution transferring the data. For example, you can see that 1 terabyte is formed in 7 to 8 days. So you can imagine in a couple of years how much is going to be this volume of this data. We used to purge this data in the past, but now it is, you know, it is stored unlimited. We have unlimited storage in Google Cloud at school side. And also the challenge is that you have to, you know, cross-check this data, Philips data with the Epic data to determine which patient was in which bed at what time. Then only you can see that, you know, after a medication is given, how the waveform changed. So there are some challenges like, you know, each bed is not labeled. There are like pre-op areas and some holding areas, the beds are not labeled. So our programmer is not able to clearly connect this data point to the patient record. So there are so many challenges like this. These are the things we have to figure out and ensure that data quality is maintained so that researchers can make use of it. So huge data is not going to really help unless it is quality data and meaningful data. So clinical research informatics have a very good role to play in that. Epic Clinical Pipe API. API, most of you are familiar with this application programming interface. Now, you know, Office of National Coordinator is trying to come up with new guidelines on it. So we are working on a connection with Clinical Pipe. So Clinical Pipe, what it does is that it acts as a pipe in between Epic EMR and the vendor system. So we work with pharmaceutical companies. We are working on a project with Genentech. So Genentech system is going to be connected with Epic using Clinical Pipe. It is a third-party app released in Epic App Orchard. This is like Apple's App Orchard. So we can transfer this data through Clinical Pipe. And what is currently happening is that people are manually entering this data. A lot of time is needed, and also there is a high risk for errors when you manually transfer it. So through this mechanism, we are hoping to save time and also reduce the errors. So, you know, we are working with different stakeholders. You can see that multiple stakeholders are involved in this. Epic REDCap API, all of you are familiar with REDCap. It is mainly used for registry use. You know, registries are supported in REDCap, so we are hoping to have a API connection. These APIs in App Orchard work using the FHIR standard. So HL7, you know, version 3. After version 3, they released the FHIR standard. Most of you are familiar with it. So we are using, these apps work using the FHIR standard, and it is very easy to connect to Epic because it is already a released app in the Epic App Orchard. So initially our plan is to do registry support using this connection Epic REDCap API. Then in the second phase, probably this can be leveraged to use you know, real-time data transfer for AI studies. to support clinical, workflows. So there are a lot of opportunities we hope to achieve using this connection. This is a case study why it is very important information systems needs to support the researchers. So this is a study that was planned by Dr. Tierney. If you look at here, you don't have to read all this. The key was that, the plan was to give a Lumify device, or it is a scanner, handheld scanner to the patient, so that patients can scan at home, the children with the help of family, and the scan was supposed to be transferred to a PAC system. But then the study was seemingly very easy study in a technical perspective, but then our IS department said, no, they cannot allow this to happen because of the security risk associated with the Android devices. So the study was stuck. Then we had to, work with AMBRA. This is a vendor we have connections with. With the help of School of Medicine, we worked with AMBRA. AMBRA came up with a $15,000 solution, Android listener, to transfer the data to cloud as an intermediary, do the security check, and then transfer it to PACS. So you can see that we could work a arrangement without paying that much because of our relationship with AMBRA. But what you can see here is that a very straightforward study delayed due to security issues and over budgeting. So it is very important that researchers work with the research informatics team to design their studies. So that is what we are hoping to achieve, closely work with the researchers to enable them to come up with sustainable study solutions. They always worry about the science behind it, and clinical research informatics team have to support them to facilitate that science.
Sijo, wrap up.
Yep. So we are there is already existing policies, privacy policies are existing, even though Stanford Children's and School of Medicine are different legal entities. We have existing policies that support all this. So we are going to respect these policies and drive our or create our processes around these policies. And this is the IS governance structure. We already have a very robust IS governance at Stanford Children's. So we are given permission by the leadership to create a research IS governance that is supporting to CRSO executive. And this research IS governance is going to be comprised of both school and the children's leadership, children's representatives, IS representatives. And this is our expectation how it will work. This committee is going to decide where the study should happen, whether it should happen at the School of Medicine side or should happen at the children's side. So those studies which has a big translational impact, the committee can decide to do it at IS, children's side. And there is going to be an internal work group we are planning to execute effectively. So this, as I said, we cannot anticipate some of the projects. So our hope is that this governance committee comprising school and hospital can be more agile in making decisions, in requesting resources, in updating the leadership. There can be that agility in our processes because this committee is going to include both children's and School of Medicine IS folks, like various IS folks. So this is our next step. We are going to set this up pretty soon. We have all the leadership support. So I hope I kind of touched base on many facets of clinical research informatics and the challenges and what we are going to do next. So that's it. I'm ready for any questions you have.
Thank you very much, Sijo. That was a great overview of a very complicated and emerging topic in the School of Medicine, which is clinical informatics, and how it differentiates from regular clinical research informatics, differs from clinical informatics versus bioinformatics. So we have a bunch of questions about that. And I'm going to try to organize them into different sort of groups. And if anyone else has any different questions that are currently on, just put them in the chat, the Q&A on the chat, and then we can then ask Sijo. So the first set is research staff are not able to do notes in Epic. We only have view capabilities. Is that going to be changing as far as research staff? And also, can the coordinator put in orders in Epic in the new clinical research informatics view?
Yeah. So it is changed, like, as of last 6 months, the information is still to reach every corners. People, coordinators who are attending the training can get the access to research notes. So if you have questions on that, just email me and we can work on it. Research orders, we talked with regulatory department. At present, they are not comfortable in letting you sign the order, sign the order, but we are going to let you pen the orders for now, and MD will have to sign it. So that feature is also enabled. Contact me and we can work on that.
That's awesome. I think that's a big help. You talked about what can be done. So one question is, what is the best practice? Let's say I'm a PI trying to do a new clinical project. What's the best practice that you recommend for me to get started interfacing with you?
Yeah, so our process is always, you can email me. You can email CRSO. We have an email address called CRSO@stanfordchildrenshealth.org. And it goes to Alice and she send it to me, whatever is informatics related. So whenever you have questions, it is better to reach out and, consult with us so that we can help you from the beginning itself. And also that help us to prepare ourselves. Like, if you are expecting some help from us 6 months down the line, that gives us enough time to prepare. And if there are resources needed, we can set the expectations on that. So, a communication will not hurt. It is always recommended to come to us. Send the email to crso@stanfordchildrens.org.
All right, so just to reiterate, because I know a couple questions. For those who want to initiate a project that involves clinical research informatics, the first thing really to do is to send an email to the CRSO. Yep. They will then parse the different parts of the project, yep. Either nursing, pharmacy, informatics, and then part of that will come to you, which then help the investigator basically put your grant and the costs together, build yep. the workbook before you start the study, and then that will be sort of the way forward. Is that correct?
Yes, and also we are putting together a intake process. So that is totally blessed by leadership. Right. Any study intake has to go through that. This will help us to connect you to the right people, pharmacy, lab, or information services, help you to budget. So we hope to work with RMG also to ensure that you go through this before even going to RMG. So there is a lot of changes coming. We will ensure that we are communicating effectively with you. Always reach out to CRSO.
So I feel like I'm advertising, but it's CRSO@stanfordchildrens.org. Roxana just put it in the chat. We'll send it out actually as part of the question and answer, the survey. But that's really where you want to go to start your project, because what you want for your grant is you want to have an adequate and an honest assessment of the needs, both for the sponsor, but also for the hospital, so that when you get the grant or your project, you'll have a very well done. So what mechanisms do you have for blinded study patients being accidentally unblinded by clinical staff?
So it depends upon the study. We have not, even though we have some opportunities to blind the patients, we have not, we are not approached by anybody at this point to support it. We have to review, depending on the study situation, what can be done. In Epic is a robust EMR. There are so many options in using that. So definitely, again, we can review what is possible. Yeah.
Okay. And then for the more basic to translational type of researchers who are doing more basic science informatics, but would like to use some more of the clinical data, what's the best? I noticed you talked about the EpicFire portal and different portals. How does one get that information dumped into, like, for example, a data lake, and then can access that? How does that work?
Yeah, so we again we have to, once these connections are established, we are going to give enough publicity so that people will come to know and people can reach out to us. Till then, please feel free to come to me. We have already a lot of people showing interest in this, so that is why we are moving forward. There are so many opportunities we can make this better once the connection is established. Especially REDCap connection. It has to go through the REDCap team initially, but then the projects can be set up on their side, and then we can enable it at the Epic side. So we are still working on some of the details with REDCap team, and we are hoping to have this live pretty soon. But always, please keep this in mind at this moment, and please feel free to reach out to us any questions.
And that's using the Epic app, the Orchard app, or is that another app?
So yes, everything is using Epic App Orchard. The reason it is very easy to do this connection. So this is a typical example. The problem is not technology. It is more about privacy and regulatory challenges. So that is why we are talking with all those stakeholders. Since the app is already released in the Epic App Orchard, it is going to be easy to do that connection. Then after that, each project is going to be, it has to be dealt itself. The data mapping and everything has to be dealt separately for each project. But we are establishing a highway so that you can drive your vehicle through that. And, there can be multiple vehicles of multiple make and style.
Okay. So I can come to you with my Hummer, and then you can drive it through your Epic app. That'd be great.
Yes.
The question about how to link data with individual medical record, you said that there's monitoring data challenges to match it up with the medical record numbers. That's just because of the bed number? That's specific to the Philips monitoring data, or is that also specific to other types of clinical data?
Yeah, so, Philips is not holding, some of our beds are not really, numbered. For example, in the holding areas, waiting for MRI or waiting for operation room. Those beds are not really numbered, like the bed in PCU 380, bed number 2, not like that. So the challenge is that in these holding beds, that it is very difficult to cross-reference that data with the Philips monitor data, because patient is going to carry this Philips monitor. When the patient comes to that bed, they hook up the monitor, but they do not enter the MRN into the monitor. Because their purpose is just to monitor, right? But the downstream impact, they don't know. So these are the things we need changes in the operational practices, and we have to get approval from different stakeholders, different parties, from nursing, etc. So these are the things we hope to work out once we have this committee established.
Great. And last question is it's now 5 years from now. What do you hope to see in terms of the clinical research informatics at Stanford and Children's Health? What do you hope to be telling us in about 5 years' time?
So we are still evolving. There is not much visibility. We want to ensure that everybody is aware. There is a process for them clearly to plan, execute their studies at the Stanford Children's Health. And we need to have extreme collaboration with School of Medicine, a streamlined processes to translate from the bench to bedside. At the same time, that learning health system, all the data has to move across the School of Medicine very easily, so that researchers can easily plug and play. So it should not be, the old situation, or even now, is that researchers have to figure out what they are going to do. But we should be able to create a situation with the basic infrastructure in place, so that any researcher coming with an idea can easily do a consult and then easily do the plug and play. At the same time, we want to be revenue conscious. We want to ensure that the resources are not unnecessarily used. We are prioritizing the most important projects, and we are answering people in the right way. So there are so many things we can achieve in the next few years.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Sijo. That was a phenomenal talk. I look forward to seeing how this integration occurs and how really it'll accelerate clinical research at Stanford and at Maternal Child Health Institute. So thanks very much. Thanks everybody for joining us. And we will see you in a couple weeks for the next MCHRI seminar, which is on the Biodesign Fellows. Thanks very much.